And it's funny you should talk about the sense of smell. In my first draft of Lights Out, it wasn't always the first sense. I was describing what people were seeing, what they were feeling, what they were saying. I found myself, but I'm missing this fifth sense, which is probably one of the strongest, particularly for humans, particularly with memory connection, right? And I was going back and adding what they were smelling. What would be theirs? What would be what would they be smelling in addition to this? The smell of the salt air. So, but now as I'm writing, I find that it's more a natural thing for me to include because it is, and it does. It paints a full picture.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, and I say welcome back because when I get a guest on the podcast that is fun to talk to, we have a great conversation, I always hope that they're going to keep writing, and they do. And then they come back. So that's exciting for me. Richard's back to talk about his second book, and it's in plain sight. I have a copy of it. I'm showing it to people on the camera because I'm proud to have a copy and add it to my library of amazing guests who've been on the show. But Richard's back to talk about this book. Catch up from our last time together. I think it was episode 525 when Richard was here last. I pulled it up on the screen. I didn't remember that number. But Richard was here last on episode 525. You want to go back and listen to that conversation as well. But Richard's back. Richard, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you here, my friend.
David, it is delightful to be here. I am so looking forward to spending this time with you. I so enjoyed our time a year ago, and it's an honor, actually. It really is an honor.
Well, I'm glad you remember me because you're like this big fancy author now. And this podcaster has time with you, which is exciting. Right. So I'm glad you're back. This is good. Awesome. So Richard, for people who haven't heard episode 525 yet, let people know where you are in this big world of ours.
I live in a suburb of Chicago, about 50 miles west of the city. Okay. And it's the city is called Batavia, Illinois. And it runs along the Fox River. It's part of the Fox River Valley. Mm-hmm. So I'm about a block away from the Fox River, which eventually ends up in the Mississippi somewhere.
You were on back in episode 525 to talk about Lights Out, right? In that book and that story. Yeah. For those people that are meeting you maybe for the first time today, can you give us a little insight into that first book? Because we're going to talk about the new one, but a little background on that one too.
Well, Lights Out, it was inspired by something that my brother had said about 10 years ago. He asked me to help him. He lives on Cape Cod, so he's been refurbishing. Back then, he was refurbishing a lighthouse. And he asked me if there are any companies still in business today making the lights for the top of the lighthouse. The current distance that the light went out was, I think, 3 miles, and they wanted it to go out to the original 13 miles that it was when it was built in the 1800s. Wow. So I found some companies out here in the Midwest, oddly enough, because there are a lot of lighthouses here on the Great Lakes. In fact, I think there are more in the Midwest than there are in either coast now. Mm-hmm. I hooked them up with a company, and that began to kind of spark the idea for me. You know, lighthouses, they have this wonderful history of being guides and a light and keep, provision from danger, and foghorns, most of them have foghorns. So, sailors have found them to be a comfort and a guide. And the way my twisted brain works is well, how could somebody use a lighthouse to do something bad? Hmm. And so that was kind of where the idea kind of germinated. I find my antagonist does some bad things from a couple of different lighthouses in different parts of the country. So he actually shoots missiles from them.
Well, that's not a great idea. No. Right?
Yeah. It's kind of counter to what, their history and their heritage. But, I can't, my own brain, it's just, that's where it goes.
Yeah.
sometime.
No lighthouses were harmed in the making of that
No
book.
lighthouses were harmed.
Okay.
The lighthouses were actually named, and the locations of them I selected because of their proximity to other things. One in
Mhm.
Boston and one in Maryland that was on the Chesapeake.
Do you had a love affair for lighthouses in the past too, then yourself?
I have really enjoyed them. As I said, I'm from New England, so lighthouses
Yeah.
are kind of really part of that heritage. The fact that my brother was actually refurbishing one was pretty cool.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember some stories as a kid. There was a movie, and I can't remember the name of the movie, and it was about some pirates who set up. They shut the lighthouse down. Of course, back then it was just putting the lamp out, and they set up a false lighthouse on some rocks. They
Oh,
they moved closer to the rocks and set up this fire that looked like a lighthouse. And I remember it caused the ship to crash, and the pirates were able to, kind of get the booty. It made a
yeah.
big impression, and it was
Yeah.
probably I was maybe 10.
Well, that's false advertising, right? to move, and yet your backyard's in advertising, so that would make sense. So yeah, that's it's interesting. I love. They're so mysterious. The lighthouses and stuff. They're just silently sitting there for the most part, and you're just yeah. They're like, do they serve a purpose? They still do, and
They do.
yeah, they're romantic too. There's a little bit of romance part of that as well. So
Yeah. The if you think about the lighthouse keeper, it's a very solitary
yeah,
job. Some of them, some of the keepers took their wives. Some of them
yeah,
left the wives home. Um, and it's Some were set up, and families lived in. Typically, there was a little house that was next to the lighthouse, or maybe
yeah.
the lighthouse was part of the house. But it was and they were typically set up on the coasts, right? So you had, lots of wind and foul weather.
Yeah.
It was not a great place to live. It took a hardy soul, particularly if you had to go back and forth to the mainland for provisions.
Right.
I mean, it was a calling.
Sounds like a great place to write a book. Maybe do a podcast.
Hey,
I don't know.
I love that. In fact, I didn't put this in the first book, but I had initially my main character, Eve, when she was in the lighthouse that ended up kind of being toward the end of the book. I had her thinking about, wow, this would be a great place to come and paint because she's an artist, right? But I kind of left it in the final edit. There wasn't a place for it, so
Yeah.
I kind of took that out. So, but you're right. There is a lot of mystery there. There's some intrigue,
Yeah.
and it's been used. They've been used in movies for that reason, right? For that
Yeah.
mysterious.
So now this is interesting too because it was about a year ago that we met to talk about that book for Lights Out. Now you're back for In Plain Sight. It's for authors that are listening. How do you know when it's time to release the next book without kind of cannibalizing the sales of the first book? Like, what do you have in your mind? Kind of a gap of time where it feels like it's about the right time for now to get on and talk about the next book in the series without hurting or harming what you've already done?
Well, there's the a lot of authors, particularly those who we all tend to really enjoy, try and keep to a book a year rhythm.
Okay.
Some like I think Mark Graney, he had, I don't know if he still does, but he was pushing out 2 a year, and that's just an enormous undertaking and a lot of work. But that seems to be a good amount. Particularly, I would say, Lights Out was my first book. It was my debut. And for new authors, if when your second book comes out and then your third, you're beginning to gain or pick up some momentum from readers. And what happens because Eve Tanzi is going to be a series. I'm now writing the third. So what you'll find is, people may pick up the second or the third book, they like it, and then they'll go back and read your earlier work, or, uh, I've done this myself, where I read writers who have a series, and I'll pick up any one of them, and then you find you really like them, and then you start reading others. I'll tend to try and go sequentially sometimes, because I'm always interested, particularly when I was writing my first book, in other authors' first novels.
Mm.
It's a good way to see their what they gave birth to first time out.
Yeah.
And then it's always intriguing to read what they're currently writing. And sometimes you can see some growth, and other times you go, wow, their first book was phenomenal, and so's this 13th book that they've just finished.
Do you think the subsequent books after that first book are kind of reliant on that first book and kind of how that first book does, or do you think they're kind of standalone from a writer's perspective?
They probably should be standalone, because you can't assume someone's going to read the books in order. So while in Lights Out it's complete, I leave a little window open for something that needs to be discovered and found out. And that takes place in the second book. But while writing the second book, it was important for me to realize that I can't depend on people having read the first. Mm-hmm. This may be the place where they start, so it has to stand alone. So I had to find a way to bring in elements that happened in the first book, in the second book, in a way that brings people up to speed. Here's what happened. Clearly, you're not going to get all the details that you took 250 pages to cover,
right?
But hit all the high notes so that there's a point of reference, and so then you move the story on. Because the second book, In Plain Sight, kind of we now discover members of the cabal who were left out of the first book, who kind of went to hiding. And the second book is about finding those folks out.
As I'm reading through my copy, which I'm thrilled to have, right off the bat, we're kind of introduced to a lot of military reference, military story inside, behind the scenes from a military perspective. Mm-hmm. Your knowledge of that world, is that something you had to learn? Is it something you knew? Like, how do you know those kind of details?
It's something that has always been intriguing to me. I haven't served, but as a kid, for me, the comic books that I collected were all World War II comic books. I was just from a very early age. I grew up in the 50s, which wasn't too long after World War II, and I had friends. We'd play Army. And I had one friend who had an actual German helmet that we all wanted to wear, even though we didn't want to be Germans, but the helmet was cool.
Wow.
And so what I've also done is a lot of, putting my character, making her an Afghan vet. I've done a fair amount of reading and research. In fact, I reference a couple of the sources that I've used in the acknowledgments in Plain Sight.
Yeah.
So it's really the wonderful thing about the web, and internet research is you don't have to go to the library anymore. You don't have to go someplace else. It's all at your fingertips. And anytime I needed to know what was the caliber of this weapon, and then, it's all right there for you to find. And I actually love the research part of what I do. There's just something very fulfilling about learning something new about something, right? Yeah. Learning for its own sake, and then being able to put that into the book. I find that the whole process of writing is what I enjoy.
Yeah.
And I think we might have talked about this last time. I'm also a fine art painter, and when I started writing Lights Out, as soon as I discovered that the process was the same as painting, I found the groove very easily.
Right.
do something to a canvas, it wants something back. You begin to have a dialogue with the work. You kind of get absorbed in the process. The finished
Yeah.
painting is nice, but it's all about solving those problems. It's having that engagement with the work. And I found the same to be true when I started writing novels. I was enamored. It was just kind of this big aha moment. It's like,
Yeah.
I know what this feels like,
Right.
because I'd been doing it
There's
for 35 years.
so yeah, you're leveraging different senses in the art of creating and painting. And what I get from your book is you're also bringing in other senses as well. So
Yeah.
you talk in the beginning there a little bit about the smells
Yes.
of going to another country, and the smell of tires, spices, and
Garbage.
kind of rotting garbage.
Yeah.
Like I already have a visual and a smell reference by
Yeah.
adding those three together, and I think that puts you into the moment
It
as a reader.
does.
Right?
And it's funny you should talk about the sense of smell. In my first draft of Lights Out, it wasn't always the first sense. I was describing what people were seeing, what they were feeling, what they were saying. I found myself, but I'm missing this fifth sense, which is probably one of the strongest, particularly for humans, particularly with memory connection, right?
Right.
And I was going back and adding what they were smelling. What would be theirs? What would be what would they be smelling in addition to this? The smell of the salt air in the scene. But now, as I'm writing, I find that it's more a natural thing for me to include, because it is, and it does. It paints a full picture.
So where did that reference come from? Those three elements, like, do you remember writing that part and going?
I remember writing that part, and that was part of some of the research, because there's the two books, the names of which I is actually
this is called putting you on the spot.
Yeah, volume 1 and volume 2 of Modern War in an Ancient Land, I think it's called. And then there's another book written by somebody who served in the airborne in Afghanistan. So it's his day-to-day account. And in one of those two books, somebody mentioned, when they went to Kabul, the thing that hit them was the smell of burning tires, rotting garbage, and Middle Eastern spices, and then that caused the other one to say, for me, it's the smell of burning hair, cordite, and gunpowder.
Wow.
Because what happens for all of us, when you smell something that you may, let's say, the smell of some baking bread or something, right?
Yeah.
That's just so powerful. It evokes memory.
Yeah.
For a lot of us, it's something that happened in our childhood or during the holiday season.
Right.
For me, in the second book, I talk about this. My heritage is French Canadian. So my grandmother would make a French Canadian pork pie called a tourtière, and she would make it every Christmas and New Year. And the smell of that, the ingredients cooking in the pan and the pies baking in the oven, I'm back there. I'm in my mother's kitchen.
Right.
So smells have this wonderful memory connection.
The one thing too I wanted to kind of jump on for the authors listening is, I think some authors, especially new authors, kind of wrestle with dialogue when they're writing. When I read your book, I feel like I'm sitting there with these people, like I'm part of the conversation. How do you develop the skill of writing dialogue the way that you've done it in your books?
It's interesting that's something I've not wrestled with. I know a lot of writers do. I think the tendency for a lot of writers is to make people's dialogue sound like writing. And that's just not the way people talk.
Right.
I've been a big fan of just when you're in a group setting, whether it's a church service or, I'm a gallery curator, so I'm at a gallery opening every month, and you just listen to conversations, and the rhythm the way people talk. People don't often talk in complete sentences. They'll start a sentence, you'll get 3 or 4 words in, pause, and shift to something else. So trying to get a rhythm of speech, I would say that probably one of the best things to do that is just to really tune your ear to the way people speak.
Right.
Or, I think all of us have been around other folks long enough to probably inherently kind of have a feel for how people speak. But it can't sound like writing. Nobody speaks in a perfect sentence, with with all the punctuation and the correct sentence structure. We tend to hem and haw and jump. So having that ear, I think what helped me too is being an advertising copywriter. I've had quite a few years of experience writing radio and writing video, and so you learn. It can't be stiff. It can't come across as plastic. It's got to sound real. So I think that was good training ground for me. I also have written a couple of screenplays, and screenplays really, if there's anything that's about dialogue, it's a screenplay. If you look at a screenplay, it's really very little description, but it's all dialogue. That's a great exercise. In fact, for writers who want to kind of get a better feel for writing dialogue, I would recommend that you pick up and read screenplays. And they're available free. It used to be back in, I think, the 80s when I started really reading them. You had to go to Script City and you had to order them. And it showed up and you got printed scripts. These days, you go online and you just Google, free screenplays, and you can download these things. And just look at movies that you like. And you'll get a sense for how people speak, because screenplays, if anything, they do that well.
Yeah, I've had conversation with people too, and they're like, open the screenplay and then play the movie, and watch what's happening in the screenplay and watch what's on the screen.
Yes, and
kind of like, and go as a cross reference and go, oh,
yes,
oh, okay. Now that the two going together really is a great education piece.
It really is. And if you get an earlier version of a script, something that is not the final version of what was shot, that's also very informative for writers. Years ago, I picked up the script for Roxanne, Steve Martin's Roxanne.
Yeah.
And I remember reading, because it was an earlier version, and there's a scene where he has to tell 20 nose jokes in the bar. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. The
guy throws the dart. He's got to come up with 20. Well, the screenplay only had maybe 6 or 7. And,
oh, no.
And I don't even know if they were the final ones.
Yeah.
But it was very insightful for me to see the process. It's like, it's not all finished as in one sitting, right? That it's a refining process. And that was a great lesson in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right. And also something for all writers to keep in mind, that you may have a first draft that's, trust me, you're not done yet.
I heard that about like The Princess Bride, where they have the script, but then they just let Billy Crystal just be Billy Crystal, and just turn the cameras on and said, "No, we did the script. Now let's just go for a fun run, and just let you go." Right. And that's what actually ended up in the movie.
Yeah.
Not really the scripted words that he was supposed to say, but just him going off and being him. And that's interesting.
Which I read a piece that they actually had the Wesley, who was dead, to put a dummy in there because the actor kept breaking up laughing.
Yeah.
They had to keep having camera crew leave because they kept breaking up laughing.
Right.
A testament to a comic genius. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if they left out some of those nose jokes in that script just to let Steve just be Steve. I'm sure he could come up with 20 jokes off the top of his head. Right.
Yeah. Because he was the screenwriter for that as well.
Yeah.
He wrote the
So it's
screenplay as well as, was the main character. So,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, dialogue I think is one thing that maybe authors are struggling with. So there's just some great ideas. The other thing too I like is your characters. You can tell they have a way of how they talk by how you've written out what they've said. You're not writing it out exactly the way it's supposed to be spelt
Right.
or worded.
Mm.
It's because you can tell there's this character and then there's this character. And this character, they're an editing nightmare as far as how you have to slow down. It's like a speed bump where you're like, wait a minute, what did they say? Oh, sound it out. Okay, now that makes sense. So your characters, even in how you've written their words, also show elements of their character in their speech as well, which is another tool, I think.
It is another tool, especially in my case where he's got a Boston accent. And, having been born and raised in Boston, I know that accent well. It is, even though I know it well, it's hard to write it. It's hard to write it phonetically. R's become W's. And then there are some R's that really aren't in the original word.
Yeah. I like that. Okay, now I do have a question.
Yes.
Because in the story, and everyone's going to have to go buy a copy, and I don't think we're giving anything away here, but in the story, you've described Eve dressed one day, and she has a University of Toronto sweater on.
Yes.
What is there a thing behind the fact that she's wearing that specific?
She went to the University of Toronto.
All right.
Well, what you'll find as you read later is we get a lot more of her background. Her ancestor was one of the French founders of Quebec, the Isle of Orleans in particular.
Yeah. Okay.
And so she's Canadian, which my grandparents both sides, one Quebec and the other in Nova Scotia. So my own roots to Canada in particular are quite strong.
There's a lot of touch points that mirror you as a person, right? The art,
yes.
The connection to Canada,
yes.
Right. There's a bunch of different touch points that I'm like, wow, right? I can see them. Knowing you and having a conversation in the past, and then reading this, I'm like, oh, I see Richard here on this page. I see Richard, a little bit of Richard over here, right? I like that.
Yeah, thank you. It's one of the things that I think every writer will probably do, whether consciously or unconsciously. There are things that, and I'm very conscious about that, and I want to pay homage, homage to my background, to my heritage, because, I'm pretty proud of it. I've joked, as you know, Double Dagger Books and Warpath Press, they're Canadian as well.
Yeah.
And I've more than once have said, I don't know, I'm thinking about moving your way.
Well, we gladly accept you back. No problem at all there.
Things are crazy here in the States.
I haven't noticed. I have no idea what you're talking about. No idea. So let's get into In Plain Sight then, a little bit more of the story for the reader. I want them to walk away from this conversation going, this is my next new read for the holiday season and beyond. We are recording this near the end of the year, but I'm excited for this to come out. Let's talk about the story and give us a little bit of background about maybe how this book as a standalone, there's kind of the story arc for somebody that's reading. Can we kind of get into a little bit about what's going to happen for us as a reader?
Sure. The second book picks up kind of where the first one left off, and there was an act of domestic terrorism that takes place in the first book. It was horrific. A lot of people were killed, and what I have dubbed the Greater Boston Massacre. It impacted the country. It impacted very much the world. So this second book, while 3 people who were involved in that horrendous tragedy were discovered and were dispatched. There were others that we are mentioned in the first book, not known who they are, but only known perhaps by their role. One was a senator, one was a judge, and another was somebody, quote unquote, close to the president or in the president's inner circle, and that's all we know. And in the second book, Eve that's her task. In the end of the first book, the president reaches out to her and says, "I need you to work with me only, me directly, to find out who's behind this." And so they do that. She moves to DC and takes an apartment there so that she can work closely with the president. And she begins to do that. There's another character that's introduced who served with her in Afghanistan. And he is very, very intelligent. She's looking for an ally, with somebody with boots on the ground, who can be with her and help her. And so he's a long trusted comrade and friend who also works for the CIA. In fact, Eve was responsible for getting him the job at the CIA. She brought him to the CIA's attention. He's described as Einstein in Arnold Schwarzenegger's body. He's very intelligent, but 6'3", 230 pounds. Brain and brawn that the Taliban feel both in spades. Yeah. So he becomes a great ally. There's also a love interest that comes up later. In the first book, I won't give too much away, but there's a love interest there that the tables are turned. It's a big twist, and as a result, she's a bit jaded for relationships. But meets this individual. I won't kind of divulge much more of the terms of circumstances under which they meet.
Right.
And then he becomes part of her life. And
okay. All right.
So that's basically the thread that runs through it is she is looking for the remaining folks who are behind this tragedy to find that there's an additional conspiracy, that they're still looking to gain control, while the avenue that they were pursuing before, which was to create a law to wield power, was shut down by Eve. They have found another way to do it.
Okay.
And it includes an additional conspiracy that gets discovered and shut down.
Nice. Okay, so what have you learned about Eve and her character in plain sight that you didn't necessarily fully kind of realize when you wrote Lights Out? Like, how has she developed? How has she changed for you as a writer?
I got to really. I had an early reader of In Plain Sight, a good friend of mine. We've known each other for 40 years, I think. He graduated Harvard with an English degree, and it's just brilliant. He's also just he was a pastor of a church for 30 or 40 years. And I gave him the early draft, and he asked me some really great questions like, would Eve really feel this way in this situation? Because it was great to have his outside-in perspective, right? Any writer, you kind of become engaged in a character or the characters and the story and the arc of the story. And sometimes you can have some blinders on as you do that. Mm-hmm. So those notes that he gave me, and in the editing parlance, they were development notes. So it was a development edit, which is, kind of more story structure. It wasn't so much, sentence structure or, proofreading kind of things. And his take on that got me to really think a little bit harder about, no, she wouldn't respond that way. In fact, she'd be angry for all these other reasons. Um, the second book and spending time with her, and you'll see I delve more into her background, to her experience, to more of her thought life. Um, I I've been married for 5 decades, and I have 3 adult daughters. I have a pretty decent handle on how women think, um, although they still surprise me. Um, so what I've discovered is essentially there we are very, very, very similar. Men and women are more alike than they are different, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I think people who can't really understand women just, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's
Yeah.
It's either they're not paying attention,
Yeah.
or they don't care to.
Right.
And so so it was easy for me to begin to develop more of a thought life, and how she felt, and how she reacted to certain things. Plus, her training comes into play. I mean, she being special forces and being CIA, she was trained in a very specific way, what they call SERE training, SERE, which is
Mm-hmm.
survivability, evasion, resistance, escape.
Yeah.
So they undergo some pretty intense training, torture, and all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
she's pretty tough. I mean, that doesn't take you're not too many pages in, you realize how tough she is.
Yeah.
But by the same token, she's an artist. And I did that intentionally. And if my character initially, when I began to think about the book, was going to be a man, and I was going to make him an artist as well, I think that tradition of a warrior who's an artist goes back to ancient Japan, if not even further.
Right.
You have samurai who were lethal and deadly in the skill of killing people, but they practiced poetry and
Right.
and painting. They understood that leaning much too far one way makes you less than human. So this balance, this yin and yang of a warrior who also is an artist, is I think, again, it's a very ancient tradition that I think pays. It also it's wonderful because it enables you to make a more complex character.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I can't imagine a samurai shopping at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or something, getting some paints and brushes. It's like, whoa, wow, okay, all right. Yeah, that's very interesting dichotomy there between the two of those different things.
Yeah.
But the balance, yeah, I think that's a very interesting point, Richard.
Yes, and in fact, I think in the second book, she's mulling over an op that she just accomplished, and doing that while she's painting, because it engages another part of her brain.
Right.
She's replaying everything from a distance, but also engaged in this activity that enables her to kind of think through what she didn't do. Did she do the right thing? Did and replays it, and things.
In Plain Sight, for everyone, is the next in the series. And you know how we do this, Richard. I like finding out from you then you're going to keep writing. You've kind of mentioned already that you're working on the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Are you thinking about another 1-year gap, roughly, between this launch and book 3? Is that kind of in your
I think
horizon?
I think that's the rhythm that seems to be an achievable one for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll probably, if things go as they have gone, I think I'll complete it, and that's like final draft, probably by this summer, and then I submit it to the publisher, and ends the process. Uh, um, so that's my hope. That's my goal. I'm finding each subsequent one a little bit more challenging because
Yeah.
I've got to put her in different settings and different situations, and um, but it's still as much fun.
It's interesting. I had an author on recently, and he's retired FBI. He was stationed in Thailand, and he talked about the training
Mm,
that the FBI has to go through, and they have a fake town, and they have different buildings, and they put the agents through training. They have hired actors who live in this or work in this town and inhabit this town, and they have to go execute like search warrants. They have some actors that'll give you a hard time, some will be complicit, but and then they watch you.
mm,
They watch how you interact with the public.
mm-hmm.
And like they have a pharmacy and a theater and a courthouse and all these, and they have streets, and it's this whole mini town on in the training facility
Wow.
for the FBI. And I'm like, what an interesting, like coming away from that, hearing that was part of his, I was asking about his training. I'm thinking, what a great place to put a story,
Yeah.
like an actual crime that happens at a test facility full of FBI agents.
Yeah.
And a real crime actually happened, not a fake one, not a staged one. And I'm like, oh, I'm just like, I'm listening to this guy talk, and I'm like, oh, should I ask him to write that book? Because that would be so interesting to hear that kind of thing, right? So
Well, Dave.
I love that you're pulling from these different perspectives that are not uniquely yours.
Right.
It's not like you did all the things that your character did, but you do the research, you bring your curiosity to the character,
Yes.
and then you create the story. And I love that that's kind of your approach.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I there are some great authors out there. I think Jack Carr is another. He actually was a Navy SEAL, and so his novels come from real world experience,
Right.
and there's a lot of authenticity, and you get to know the grain of the bullet that he's using. But also, I think this whole genre, you could probably say, was started, by Tom Clancy. Tom Clancy never served,
Mm.
and his books are just rife with real, authentic, the technology, the weaponry, the ranks, the attitudes that the military has with themselves and with the public. I mean, this was a lot of what he wrote was prior to the internet. So he would actually go to all these places and he would
Right.
interview all these people and he did all the legwork. But it wasn't firsthand experience for him. So it's possible for anybody. See, this is my philosophy is the old writing adage, write what you know. Is like, no, write what you love. Because if
I
you
like
write
that.
what you love, you can
Yeah.
pick up what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't
Right.
fake passion. Because if you don't
Right.
love what you're writing, it's going to come through. So write what you love, and then you can always learn what you don't know.
That's good.
Yeah,
I like that.
and that's
I like that.
I believe that, and I have felt that for the longest time.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, how boring is it to write what you know? I mean, unless you've led an incredible life and just served several different careers and
Yeah.
all of this life experience to draw from. Even that, is going to at some point lack some authenticity because you still need to get inside people's heads and
Yeah.
right, how people think and how people feel. Empathy is
Yeah.
huge. While members of my government have lambasted empathy publicly, it is clearly, I think it's the most effective tool that makes any creative person do what they do. And it also makes us human.
Yeah.
Period.
Interesting.
All
right.
Yeah.
We have a lot more to look forward to from you, which I'm excited about, which also selfishly means I get to have more conversation with you in the future, which makes me happy. And I have you with me now in my hand here in plain sight. And I'll have it here in plain sight so I can see it at all times. But it's great to have a copy of your book, Richard. Let's talk about your website so we can send people there so they can follow your journey or however you want people to connect with you as an author. Where would you like to send people? And I have one more question to wrap up.
It's pretty simple. It's richarddeveau.com. Richard, DEVEAU.com. I've not updated the site to cover in plain sight yet. That's in the works. But the links to the books are, Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Because the publisher uses Ingram as a distributor, basically the book is available anywhere you can buy books. You just give them my name and the title, and they'll order it for you if that's the way you want to go. But it's available online and typical outlets. Oddly enough, I'm very fortunate. The Barnes and Noble that's near me, I've had a book signing there this past June. They were so happy they decided to stock the book. We're going to have another book signing for In Plain Sight. Actually, we're going to have two. We'll have one in January and then one in June. Last year, I did it just before Father's Day, and they were happy with the number of books that we sold. So I want to do that again. So,
are you allowed to go into the store and sign your own book, like just autograph it and put it back on the shelf? Are you allowed to do that, or are you not allowed to do that?
Well, first of all, if they are carrying your book, which is a major thing, because a lot of bookstores, the chain of bookstores, tend to not include local authors.
Sad.
There, I guess. I mean, there's some work out there that's just, it's okay. The bookstores really want to carry work that they know is going to sell. And for me, not knowing that, having a number of folks come in and buy the book, they're like, okay, we know we're at least going to sell 20.
Right. Yeah.
But I was very fortunate to have a relationship with the assistant manager, and she took a chance on me, and it paid off for her, and so far it's paid off for me. But I actually did. They ordered 40 copies, and I spent a couple hours, signing 40 copies.
Nice.
That they put a little gold sticker on the front that says, signed copy.
Oh, wow. We can charge more for that, right?
Well, not yet.
Come on. Mine's not signed. I'm now all like, I'm fine. I got to talk to the author. I'm happy with that. Now, before we go, Richard, I love having you come back many, many times. Keep writing. You do have a story, and I want to end off with a story because stories are fun. You did something like 25, 26 years ago, helping Stephen King.
I did.
Can you tell us this story about this? Because I think it's so unique, and it's not a story that anybody could tell, but you can. So can you give us a little insight on what happened?
One of the ad agencies that I was working for at the time, and my career spans about 4 decades of writing ad copy and directing creative teams. The ad agency I worked for in 2000 had a client called SoftLock. And this was a software company that had basically figured out how to basically have printed material paid for online and then downloaded. Now, this was 7 years before Kindle existed. So this was leading edge technology. At the time, Simon & Schuster wanted to partner with SoftLock. Simon & Schuster, which at the time was Stephen King's publisher. Stephen King wrote a novella called Riding the Bullet that he only wanted to be available online. He did not want it printed. It has since become a printed book, but that was his goal. So SoftLock and Simon & Schuster decided they would publish this book. My task was to write all the ads for that campaign. We had heard that Stephen King himself guessed that there would be maybe 60,000 downloads. It was a new technology. It was a new way to get books. It was, and we thought, okay, we toyed with, do we release it a chapter at a time for 25 cents a chapter, or do we release the whole book? And we decided we'd release the whole book, and it was $2.50. So 60,000 copies, it's about $150,000, right? Not bad, because printing costs, no distribution, no nothing. Well, the time of the launch came. 400,000 people tried downloading the book at the same time. This was back in 2000. So the servers crashed. And the way the network worked then was you had this cascading problem. If the server crashed while you were on your computer crashed. So the servers crashed. Who knows how many computers were crashed? They got to it. They fixed it quickly. When all was said and done, 500,000 people downloaded the book, and essentially ebooks were born.
Wow.
We had no idea that was going to happen. For me, it was right place, right time. Quite frankly, part of me says, oh, it was the ads, but no, it was Stephen King. I mean, I could have just put that was the only ad, the headline, Stephen King available. Yeah. But it was a wonderful experience. And it was, as I said, it was just a delight to have a hand in that. And really the whole industry took notice after that, and it really changed. I think Amazon was selling books, but of course they weren't downloading. They couldn't sell Kindle. It wasn't available. You could just order a book and have it shipped to you as you do now. So it was really the forefront of that entire industry.
It's very interesting that Stephen King made that decision to do it that way, and basically created something.
Yes.
And I'm curious to know what his response was to that overwhelming demand for this book in this new format, when he had one expectation, but it completely blew up. Right?
I think he's clearly a visionary, and I think he had probably a good inkling, like he and a number of other folks felt that the future was, this digital world.
Right.
But he also had the clout to say, I want to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
If it was any other author, it may not have been may not have happened.
Yeah.
Stephen King, and therefore, but that's the kind of visionary that I think he still is. And
well, it's a great story.
It was a lot of fun.
It's a great story.
Yeah,
that's a great story. Yeah, that's something you can hang your hat on. I was a part of that. That's good.
Yeah, very true.
It's amazing. Richard, again, thank you so much for doing this. Keep coming back, please. Love to have you back again. Congratulations in advance on In Plain Sight, just going to take over the world, and we're going to know more and more about Eve and her journeys, and I'm excited to see where you take us next as an author. So,
David,
I think the audience loves connecting with people like you, and you just keep writing, we'll keep reading. That's our commitment to you.
That's so lovely. I thank you so much, David, for this opportunity. You are a delight. You're a wonderful host. I feel like, you're my old friend, it's so easy to connect with you and relate to you and to listen to you. Your podcasts are delightful.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that so much. Everyone, all information, as always, for Richard in the show notes. Don't just buy this book. Come on. If this is the first time you've heard Richard, then go buy Lights Out as well. That book is amazing. The two together, you'll double your love for Richard just by getting both. And then just be ready, because Richard's going to have another one. So follow his website and stay in touch with him, and keep your eye on this author. I think you're really going to love not just these two books, but what's coming in the future. Richard, again, come back. I'd love to have you back. Thank you so much.
David, I definitely will. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Everyone, have a great Christmas holidays if you're listening right now. And if you're listening in the future, perfect. Go grab a copy right now. Leave a great review as well. let people know why you love this book so much.
Yes.
And make sure that people understand that In Plain Sight is your top read for 2026. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.